But from a creative point of view, is there any movie existing that you would love to write a remake or a sequel to?
I don't think in those areas. You know, what can be a sequel or what should be a sequel. Most of my creative energy that goes into it seems to go on the first one, and then I move on to something else that I'd like to do.
Okay, so we have a few questions that has been sent in earlier from the audience. I'm going to write.
I can understand your questions, the fine in Hungarian, and if I can't, then you'll help me, but I can't, so feel free, please.
Okay.
There's a question.
So first of all, thank you so much for coming here. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Speaks really good Hungarian, no?
I should leave my Hungarian accent, even though when I lived in the States, I said that I don't have an accent. The rest of America has.
My father, not to interrupt you, but when I had a very thick accent, my dad had an impish sense of humor. The final things, I couldn't say the word the TH sound, right? It always came out da. So I practiced in front of the mirror trying to say the. And one morning my dad sees me practicing, and he goes, "Why don't you tie a rubber band around it?" I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, try that." So I'm putting this rubber band down, and he walks by me and he goes, "Asshole," you know, and he keeps going. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
So we actually are teaching your screenplays, actually basic instinct, some of the scenes at the Budapest Film Academy, the writing class, the directing class, we are analyzing it. While I would have 100 questions about that, I would like to ask you, if you forgive me, for changing the topic, a different question.
Use the microphone because they cannot translate.
Okay, well, if you give me one. But I can also speak loud.
No, but they need to hear you in the booth.
So my question would be that one of the most exciting things which I read from you is actually, although I love your screenplays, is not your screenplays, but your book Hollywood Animal, which is the ultimate American story, an immigrant family story, which you could write at least 2-3 different screenplays about, from your father's perspective, your mother's perspective, your perspective. And my question is, did you ever consider making a movie or writing a screenplay based on your own story, or based on an incredible story which was your life and your family's life?
Well, first let me say that I truly loved the Hungarian title. The Hungarian title is Hollywoodi Fenevod. You know, that word Fenevod is stunning. It certainly applies to me, and there's no English translation that I could come up with. We tried to make it a TV miniseries with Barry Levinson directing. Barry liked the book very much, and we took it around to 3 or 4 places, and no one was interested in doing it. But we gave it a shot. I think to do it as a movie would be as a 2-hour feature would be very difficult, because it has this big sprawling arc, right? And it's also possible that I may not be the best person to do that. That you would need someone with more objectivity who could cut things out of it, you know. Now, I know how shocked Andy is when he hears me say it's better to have someone else cut it. And I'm only speaking of this context. That's it, I want to clarify. But that would be the problem. Yes, please.
You said that the script was not really received well in Hollywood because they didn't see a redemption at the end. We were talking about the ending, right?
No, the basic
instinct. I'm back to the movie, sorry. We were talking about basic instinct.
Was very well received. Everybody
So it was well received, but they had rewrites because they didn't like the ending. The ending was not.
They meaning Paul Verhoeven and Michael Douglas, yes.
Yeah. So I see a redemption in this movie. Is it just me?
You must be
the very end.
You must be a very dark creature, but but just for my information.
I am dark.
I would see. Just for my information, where is the redemption?
Well, maybe it's just me wanting to read the redemption into the story because
Yes.
I know too much about the paradigm and all that, you know, resurrection and all that, what you have to expect at the end of the story.
Right.
But to me, it's like Catherine's a tormented soul who's going through hell. She's very manipulative.
Yes,
she's
yes.
ill. She's a very sick person. But her relationship with what's it, Michael Douglas?
Michael, yeah, with Nick
Yeah,
Curran,
with Nick.
yes.
It's sort of, this is her journey, because she's having her own journey through this movie. And to me, that very ending, when she decides not to use the ice pick, maybe she will use tomorrow, I don't know, it's an open ending, fantastic. But still, to me, it's a moment of rebirth or resurrection or redemption, whatever you want to call it, in her psyche, in her character.
I wish I was smart enough to say that to Michael Douglas when we had our argument. You know, it would have been great. Well, it's a very interesting point.
So I just wonder how whether it was intentional or I'm just reading it into it.
I love the notion of ending it on the ice pick because of the ambiguity, the fact that it was under the bed. She could reach for it or not. You know, a lot of people, many people, even after they saw the movie, I mean, the question I kept being asked in public by people was, well, did she do it or did the other one do it? I mean, so I thought that ambiguity would work. Paul really fought for it. Mario, with Andy's help, supported it in the sense that the movie, as far as I know, never had a focus group. You know, the thing with focus groups in Hollywood is that every movie is put before a committee of people and they listen to their recommendations, and it always waters down and weakens the movie. Verhoeven said no focus groups. Most studios would have said, forget about it, we're doing a focus group. They backed them off, no focus groups, and it turned into such a big hit.
By the way, I mean, we do usually do focus groups because they're very helpful to us. Not written answers, but if you watch the audience during the screening,
Yeah.
I think you get an impression, which really works. I think by the time they write the answers, they're critics.
Yes.
That's a different thing.
That's very interesting.
But I think the focus groups themselves are very helpful. This movie was so strong that we felt we don't need anything. We believed in it right from the beginning.
A kérdéseket magyarul is fel lehet tenni egyébként, hogyha ez bárkit visszatart. Kérünk ide egy mikrofon.
How do you feel about movies getting dated?
Én úgyis sajnos csak magyarul tudnék kérdezni, csak annyit akarok kérdezni, az egyszerű kérdés.
Egy pillanat.
Kérdésem az lenne, hogy a rendező, nem ő rendezte véletlenül a Török gyümölcsök című filmet korábban? Az nem az ő filmje volt? Volt egy, ez csak úgy kérdezés. És még egy, amit akartam, ez az elemi ösztönre vonatkozóan kérdés, hogy ő tanulmányozta ön a hindu mitológiát, tehát az istennőket, a Káli, Durgá, Párváti, mert a Káli istennőnek, ugye, mint a véres, rettenetes istennőnek voltak ilyen rettenetes kultuszai, amikkel élt olyanok, hogy embereket is áldoztak neki Indiából ennek az istennőnek. Tehát, hogy ezek az istennő asszociációk nekem bejöttek, én is mondjuk olvastam hindu mitológiát valamennyire, tehát, hogy köze van ezekhez az istennő mitológiákhoz, vagy istennő képzetekhez, ön tanulmányozta ezeket valaha?
I'm sorry I didn't understand your question.
The first part of the question was that Paul
I
Verhoeven,
thought you didn't understand it either, you understand? Okay.
that Paul was directed Turkish Delight. That the answer is yes, and the other one I didn't get it. Something about a Kali goddess.
Something about what?
A Kali goddess and their rituals. Did you study the Kali Indian rituals before you wrote this script? Did you have any inspiration from it?
I still don't understand the question.
Indian rituals, Kali?
Paul Verhoeven's most interesting, in my mind, early movie, which scared the hell out of me when I first saw it in terms of what he was going to do to Basic. And I forgot the title of it, but the movie opens with a penis being cut off and twirling up into the sky, right? And I thought, oh boy, what is this going to look like? You know.
There was a question here.
My question is, how do you feel about movies getting dated?
How did you feel about it?
Films getting dated.
This film getting dated.
Well, any film.
Because some movies are getting like, this film is 15 years old now. And
Right.
today, audience are not so receptive to it because time has changed. So how do you feel about it? And what is your vision of the future of cinema? It's two questions.
Well, I'm just a writer, Andy. This is a question for you.
Oy. Well, I don't think Basic Instinct is dated. I think it's going to be one of the classic movies of all times. Films do get dated because things change and people's values change and audiences change. But the real true classics, Casablanca, will not get dated. Basic Instinct will not get dated. I'd like to have some other films mentioned that I've made that won't get dated, but probably Basic Instinct is one that isn't going to get dated. As far as where films are going, God, you know, that's, we don't want to follow them, so we want to lead them. So I think we don't think about where they're going, we think about where we want to take it to. And I think, I think, you mean the movies, the theaters like this? Or cinema as the product? Cinema as the product will always be here. I mean, with all the different various platforms that exist today, raw material, I mean, content is so important, and cinema or movies are content. So they become more and more important every day. The more platforms there are, the more use you have for them. And although I hate, you know, these new ideas of watching it on your telephone, because I know that we sit in the mixing room and we watch every footstep and every word and every particular thing to make sure it's right. And when you watch it on a screen this big, it really doesn't matter. But I think cinema is really designed for theaters, and it's designed for a group experience where the audience feeds upon each other. And I think gets an energy from that, and it gets response from that. And I think that will never die. It may get less, it may get more, it may get trendy, or it may get untrendy, but it will always be here.
The way I'd answer your question is Basic Instinct 1 is not dated. Basic Instinct 2 is completely dated. Basic Instinct 3 won't be dated. So let's make another.
Egy kérés, hogy mindenképpen elemi ösztönnel kapcsolatos kérdéseket várunk. Lesz még időnk a nap folyamán egyéb típusú kérdésekre is.
Just yell it out.
There seem to be a lot of allusions to the work of Hitchcock in the movie. As you were writing the script, was it intentional to pay tribute to certain films of his, or in general you were in the spirit of this whole genre?
There was a baseball manager who said, "I never get ulcers, I only give ulcers." Okay? I never do homages, I like homages. Right? So that's what I don't. No, it was not consciously. I'd certainly seen all of Hitchcock. I liked certain movies, but there was not. I didn't do it consciously.
Thank you.
I'm very interested in how you work with directors and producers. How do you know when to push back, and how do you know when to kind of concede the point, or do you concede the point?
Well, look, I mean, I've worked with 3 directors twice, with Verhoeven, with Costa Gavras, and with Richard Marquardt. I think if you aren't collaborative, you're not going to work with any director, let alone 3 of them twice. And I do collaborate, and I like it many times. I don't suffer fools very well. I'm Hungarian, okay? And then I run into that. You know, there was one director that was so bad, I thought in terms of the material, and then he was destroying the movie, that I wrote him a brutal 17-page letter, right? I did this knowing that he had a heart problem, right? But it didn't work. He finished the movie. The only thing that if somebody comes in, Verhoeven and I, at the very beginning, meeting we had, and the meeting that touched off the disagreement, the fireworks, was there was a meeting with Michael Douglas, and I was there with Irwin Winkler, who was going to produce Basic, who had produced 2 movies with me, and Paul, of course. And Paul, you know, had this habit. I don't know what he does now, and he certainly didn't do it with me. I've just had this habit of saying, and he's Dutch, and his accent is very sort of Germanic, even though the man hates Nazis and his family suffered at the hands of the Nazis in the Second World War. But he came across in this very peremptory Germanic style, and he said, I am the director, yeah, and you are the writer, yeah, and you will do what I tell you to do, right? Well, he said this 3 times, and 3rd time I said, listen, fuckhead, I'm gonna come across this sofa and kill you, you know, if you say this to me again. And the meeting blew up. They stormed out. Michael and Paul stormed out. Winkler, who's a mild-mannered man, he screamed, you fucking Nazi, at Verhoeven as he left. It was just horrible. You know, so I don't like being treated that way. Being an immigrant refugee kid who came into this country and saw certain things as he was growing up, I don't like being treated that way. And it's possible that, you know, I have, from my growing up years, I have such chips on my shoulders that I shouldn't be a screenwriter. That's possible, but I am who I am, right? So, but if there is Costa Gavras, for example, we did both Betrayed and Music Box together, and it was a truly wonderful collaborative experience. The Richard Marquardt and I became the closest friend, and Paul and I became friends after Basic, and then we did Showgirls together. After Showgirls came out, we stopped being friends again, but that happens. You can always be friends in Hollywood if you have a hit movie together. Now, if you do a real clunker, that strains the friendship a little bit, you know. So it depends on the person, you know, it depends on the director, depends on the project. Andy and I, as a producer, and I have had fights, but I've always felt that he treats me and the material with great respect. And on occasion, he's forgiven me when I've done my usual excesses and tirades, and he seems to have forgotten about it somehow. He's a man of great patience that way. And then if that's the attitude, you know, I think it works. I also know that what he brings to the party, he brings his experience, he brings his vision. He knows the kind of movie he likes to make, and he's very professional about it, you know, and very decent about it. There are a lot of people in Hollywood who aren't so decent the way they treat you, right? And if they treat me that way, then I treat them that way, you know. So, but it all depends.
You know, it's very interesting, but I think the real answer from the producer's standpoint is about, or the director's problems, is about insecurity. Usually they're not sure about what they want to do and how they want to do it, and they're looking for the answers. And I believe that a great movie gets made only when the 3 people are in the same car, going in the same direction. And that vision first comes from the screenplay. Once that's done, and we're all going to go down that road, we have to have the same vision. And if we have the same vision, then all the comments are positive because we're pulling in the same direction. And the stuff that doesn't make any sense falls away. So I think it's about security and having the vision of that movie that's really important.
I agree with that, absolutely.